Hey, listeners, welcome back to another Ask Me Anything episode of the Untethering Shame podcast. I'm your host, Kyira Wackett, and today's question is tender, heartfelt, and one that so many people quietly wrestle with. The shame of not being able to be there for someone you love in the way you wish you could. Here's what our listener wrote. My dad recently received a scary health diagnosis. I live across the country and I can't be there the way I wish I could. He's struggling and scared, and I feel so guilty I can't help more. The thing is, he isn't expecting me to drop everything and come home, but I feel like a bad person. I feel like a bad kid. How do I reconcile the shame I feel about not being there, even though I know I'm doing the best I can? Now, first off, I just want to pause and honor the weight of this. The pain of loving someone deeply, knowing they're suffering, and feeling helpless. That's a kind of grief that lives in your bones. And what's layered on top of that, the shame, is that quiet voice that says, if you really cared, you'd do more. Now, that voice is powerful, and it's wrong. See, here's what's really happening underneath all of this. Shame shows up whenever we bump up against our limits, and caregiving from afar is one of the hardest limits to accept because love tells us to show up. Shame tells us we're failing when we can't. But here's the truth. Proximity isn't the same as love. Presence isn't defined by geography. So let's unpack a few ways to reconcile that gap between what you want to do and what you can do. First, let's redefine what being there actually means. Physical presence is one way of showing up, sure, but it's not the only way. Calling, sending voice notes, arranging care, checking in, these are all acts of presence. The goal here is connection, not perfection. 2, name your grief honestly. Sometimes we confuse guilt for grief. So you're grieving the version of this moment you wish existed. One where you could make things better. You could make things okay for everyone. When you can name this as grief, you stop treating it as something you did and need to fix, and you can start allowing it to be felt and endured. 3, notice what shame is trying to protect here. See, shame often says, if I feel bad enough, maybe I'll prove how much I care. But guilt doesn't equal devotion. You can love someone fiercely without punishing yourself for circumstances that you can't control. 4, stay connected in the ways that you can. Maybe that's a daily text. Maybe it's coordinating with siblings or other friends or family. Maybe it's journaling about what you'd say if you were there. Connection is about intention. Again, not proximity. And finally, practice some radical self-compassion. When you hear that bad son, terrible kid voice, respond with something like, I love them deeply, and I'm allowed to have limits on what I can and am able to do. This isn't avoidance, it's truth. You can't pour from empty, and your parent, from what you said, doesn't actually want you to. So as we carry this forward, let's sum up a few things. Again, presence is not defined by geography. You can show up emotionally even from miles away. Guilt often masks grief. When you name what you're actually mourning and losing and letting go of, shame loses power in its story. Loving harder is not going to fix what's out of your control. Compassion has to flow both ways, towards others and towards the self. Boundaries don't mean you care less. They help your care last longer. And finally, connection lives in intention, not proximity. Every call, every check-in, every I love you matters. So if you're listening and walking through something similar, maybe a sick parent, an aging family member, or even a friend in crisis, please remember that love can stretch across distance. What matters most is that you keep the thread alive, not that you hold it perfectly. And of course, let's connect in the comments. Let's build those threads there to support each other in everything we're taking on and sorting through in our own lives. Now, make sure before you head out that you check the show notes for links to ask your own question for the Ask Me Anything episodes and ways to get connected with me if you're ready to take the next step in your own shame resilience journey. As we wrap up for today, remember, you are not failing by living your life. You're human for wishing you could do more. And that ache, it's just love that doesn't have a landing place right now. I'll see you all next week.